Praise the sun, and welcome to episode 23 of an ongoing series where we basically take the camera anywhere we want. We try to find secrets and new discoveries to some of our favorite games. And with that said, let's get going. So the first thing that we're going to check out is in Firelink Shrine, and it represents a lot of what this episode's going to be, and that is checking out all the backgrounds. Because apparently, the developers do not know what conservatism is in video games. And when we take the camera all the way back to where all these backdrops are, you come to find out that they're actually all fully rendered and very detailed, for seemingly no reason in fact. For example, this town over here is complete with many things like doors, wells, and what have you. It's incredible. Out of all the episodes that I've done of Boundary Break, I've never seen so much detail to a set of buildings that were off in the distance. So it's been said that in this room there's actually an unused scene where a wall opens up and it's supposed to reveal a hidden passage. Well, of course, my own curiosity got the better of me, and I had to see, is there something beyond this wall? Now, typically, when you move through a wall, the room will very blatantly end. You're on the other side of the wall, and that's all there is to it. But if we go through the other side of this wall, that has been said to have something on the other side, you'll see that there's actually some extra space. It's just disappointing to find out that there's not much more to it than that. Oh well. So while going through the debug menu of Dark Souls, I actually found a review version of it. It comes complete with its own unique title screen, music, and select screen for up to 6 different characters. Now, it's pretty obvious who I'm going to pick here. And actually, I'm going to pick Solaire for a better reason than just because he's Solaire. And obviously, it's so he can remove his helmet. Come on, Solaire, what do you look like? Oh, yeah, alright. Solaire basically looks like what I imagine a cosplayer of Solaire to look like underneath the helmet. A ponytail that only a mother in her basement could love. And while we're still on the topic of Solaire, let's go find out what Solaire is looking at. Couldn't possibly be the sun. I mean, that would just make too much sense, right? No, probably is exactly what it is. Don't even worry about it. Let's just go over to that cliffside across the way. And while this environment isn't quite as robust as the beginning of this episode, you can still take note of things like this boulder, and just the mass of the land in general. It's huge. It would take a long time to actually walk through this at normal speed. Wow, we're actually stringing these scenes along pretty well. Anyway, so while we're here, I figure we can take another look at a feature of Dark Souls. And that is that even though all the areas are mostly rendered in at almost any given time, it's very interesting how they actually spawn enemies in Dark Souls. If we bypass a major chunk of land and go all the way to the tower where the Dark Knight rests at the very top and just drop ourselves there, what do you think will happen? Well, it's incredibly interesting and I love it. When you set foot on any piece of land that has an enemy spawn, it's only then that the enemies will actually spawn in place. Like, for example, when I went to Sen's Fortress, I wanted to see where the boulders were coming from, so I went up the tunnel, and when I got up there, I saw nothing. I was a little disappointed. But then I set foot on the ground, and whoa! Hey, look at that! That's what... What? Really? Oh, come on. Now here's one of the biggest inspirations for the show Boundary Break, Anor Londo. Now, when I first played Dark Souls, I went in blind. I had no idea what I was getting into, and already up to this point of the game, I was fairly impressed with it. In fact, very impressed with it. But when I saw Anor Londo for the first time, my jaw dropped. I had no idea how they pulled this off. You're looking off in the distance, I assumed what they did was just make some really convincing 2D drawings to represent Anor Londo in the distance. And I could not be happier to be wrong. Anor Londo is built to scale, and it is 100% the building that you traverse through when you reach that point. But what's even more surprising than this, one thing that I didn't even notice in my casual playthrough of the game, is that there's an entire city to the right of Anor Londo's castle. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm incredibly impressed, but developers, what? You still managed to pull out a fantastic game, but I don't know how you managed to waste so much time building all of this stuff to scale. Literally, everything here is built to scale. That building off in the distance on the mountaintop, that's the Duke's Archives. And that building is built to scale. If we take the character over there, he's the same height as the entrance door to Duke's Archives. So absolutely no expense was spared with this area. And my only regret is that I didn't have more time to show this off to you guys. There's like so much to see, it's insane. Yeah, and you know what? Since we're already at Duke's Archives, let's fulfill a viewer request. Someone wanted to know what happens when you go up to the mysterious floating door in Duke's Archives. Now, I didn't even know this existed, but apparently if you go up to one of the balconies, you can see a floating door out in the sky. So, no problem, buddy. We're just gonna take ourselves up there and walk on over and... Oh, you did it again, Dark Souls. Alright. Sorry. Anyway... When we go up there, we can see that the door is actually unique to itself. There's no other door like this in Dark Souls, but unfortunately, nothing happens when you try to interact with it. In fact, what I thought was going to happen was once we got up there, a building was just going to warp into place or something, because that's pretty common. Floors and walls, they tend to warp in, but sometimes objects will hang in place until you reach that spot. But in this case, no, it's just a floating door for, I guess, no reason. It seems like with each scene that goes by, the scenery gets colder and colder. Anyway, we are now at the painted world of Ariamis. One very natural question you may ask yourself when you're warped into this area is, what's on the other side of that bridge? Because you're not allowed to go over there. We just start off at the midpoint of the bridge. And of course the game expects you to just keep pushing forward, because if you try to go back, you're going to fall through. Well, when we take our character over there, you can see that there's a whole mess of trees and a lot of terrain. Again, fairly impressive when you consider the fact that they didn't really have to put in that much terrain or that many trees. In fact, the entire world of Ariamis is one giant ring around this isolated castle. Hey, that's a lot of paint. Alright, enough cold terrain, let's heat things up. In Lost Islet, there is a sphere-like structure that's buried under molten magma. But when we walk around from the Tomb of Giants, you can actually see the sphere structure in its entirety, which includes textures that go well below the ground, and also you can see the top of it, which is just a mesh of textures, but it's still cool that it's there.
Thou hast journeyed far, and overcome much, chosen undead.
I think anyone can appreciate this incredibly iconic scene when you finally meet Guinevere from Dark Souls. Now, I don't know about you, but this scene really gave me a humongous sense of accomplishment. Like, I finally made it to the top of the mountain almost. But I don't think anybody can deny the fact that this room is very restrictive. Guinevere herself never moves from that spot, and also you can never actually see what's beyond Guinevere. So if we take our character beyond the boundaries, what do we end up seeing? Well, right off the bat, we can see that Guinevere has nothing going on in the back, but what about beyond the couch? What can we see beyond the couch? And actually, there's a very tough wall. I don't know why they decided to put a very restrictive, invisible wall here, but we're gonna get through it. But first, let's just drop down and see what else we can find out about Guinevere. Wait! Are you serious? Did we just kill Guinevere? All I did was just drop on her! I can't touch Guinevere without her dying? Alright, lesson learned, folks. I've honestly never done this before, so this is this is actually a little scary for me. I'm not going to lie.
Thou shalt perish in the twilight of Anor Londo.
Well, the show must go on, I guess. So anyways, this is what is beyond the chair that Guinevere used to live in. Alright, now we're going to be doing a little bit of a tour of Ash Lake. And just to speed things up, we're going to be running around at the speed of sound. Got nowhere to go except for the Ancient Dragon. And I thought we'd just get a better look at the Ancient Dragon because, well, you're kind of a puny person and you don't really ever get a great look at him because you're so tiny. So if we move the camera up, we can see a better look at his face and how his horns are structured. One's actually a little bit bigger than the other. How unfortunate for him. Let's explore the rest of Ash Lake. Actually, what's very interesting about Ash Lake in general is that just beyond the clouds is the same texture used for the rooted floor that made you get to Ash Lake. So in Ash Lake, it's a rooted ceiling. If we take the camera all the way to the back, there's actually a stone wall. And of course, I gotta wonder what's going on beyond the ceiling. I mean, if there's a stone wall, maybe there's more to it. So if we just take it... Alright, yeah, sure. I didn't want to see it anyway. By the way, if you're genuinely concerned about what was up there, it turned out there was nothing. So it's okay. But in its place, we can always just have a shot of ourselves dropping down on Ash Lake, which is pretty awesome in itself. So just before we go to the final area of the game, I figured we'd take a look at this little rest area. Because what's really interesting about it is that there are staircases that go up, but you're not meant to go there, or at least it doesn't allow your character to go there. So if we take our character there by force, it looks like you're not actually meant to go back there. There is a small narrow space behind the wall, but it looks like it wasn't really meant to be by design. It looks like it was just easier to leave it this way. Now here's one of the most restricted areas in Dark Souls, Kiln of the First Flame. This area is completely covered in ash, and the game intends for you to go through a divot in the ash. So you're basically following a trail of divoted ash until you get to the area where Gwyn, Lord of Cinder, is. But I think it's about time that we get a much better look at this area. And kind of like Anor Londo, it doesn't make any sense to me why it would restrict the player so much when there's literally so much rendered that you could just explore. Now, I kind of get it. You know, it wants you to stay on track so that you go straight to the boss, and it can control the challenge as you reach your destination. I mean, seriously though, once you get to your destination, I'm surprised there isn't an option to explore it. Another viewer requested for the Lost Izalith from the Tomb of Giants. And what an easy request that was. See, all we have to do is just start from the bonfire that we warped to, and just start walking in that direction. Oh, there's a solid wall in my way. Oh, good. No problem. We have a workaround for this. This is Boundary Break after all. We break those boundaries. So all we gotta do is... See, no, I bet all of you are so tired of this gag right now. Trust me, I was done with it a million times over while I was making this episode. But you cannot break my spirit, Dark Souls. That's the nature of your game. Sure, it can be painful and frustrating, but those of us with strong willpower see the end of it. And we see the end that justifies the means by marching forward. Guys, thank you so much for watching. This is a little hard for me to do the outro this week because Pat is standing on my bed. So bouncy. Yeah, you can't see what's going on his end, but it's really ridiculous from my point of view. So, anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. This week, I actually have done an interview with the Two Button crew. If you want to see that interview, just click the link down below. And if you want to vote for next week's episode, it's going to be a choice between Kirby's Return to Dreamland for the Nintendo Wii. And Pat, give me an episode idea.
Dying Light.
That's definitely not an episode we could do. We're going to do a mystery title in the link, so that's my way of saying that I wasn't prepared for this. So enjoy the secret thing. Yeah.
Mysteries.
So anyways, that's this week's episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the very first non-Nintendo console Boundary Break episode. Let me know what you thought, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.
Bye-bye now, you hear?